God, I gotta get this off my chest. I know I'm being put to the test, but I just need a moment of rest. I'm trying my best, but I can't catch my breath. This hole seems to never end. Feel like the bottom keeps giving in. Maybe this is where you begin. I'm falling deeper, Lord, pull me in. Oh, I'm at rock bottom.
Good morning, everybody. This is Steve, the Worley Bugger. It's April 23rd, 2026. Here at the fabulous Reinhardt Park Boat Launch in smack dab in the city of Ellensburg. Farmlands. That's a beauty, ain't it? River got a bump of water from a couple of different issues. One, that late snow that came last week up around 3,000 feet that closed Snoqualmie Pass. So dumped a bunch of snow, and then we had some warming temperatures, and then we also had quite a bit of rainfall here, and that has added some water to the river and some turbidity. You can see today it's definitely off color. I wouldn't say that it's not fishable. It's definitely probably still fishable, but you know, at this volume, wade fishermen are out of the game in a lot of places, and we're just kind of starting to get to that time of the year. We're nearing the end of April. We're gonna see, well, it's kind of hard to say this year what we're gonna see as far as river flows go. Definitely not gonna see the same types of flow structures that we normally see. At least that's what came down from the Bureau and the irrigation. Demand for water is not going to increase rapidly until the air temperatures increase. So in the month of May and even into June, you know, if temperatures stay mild, I mean, they're already irrigating. The canals here in the valley and the lower valley are already filled, and they're pulling water from them right now, irrigating. But as temperatures increase, the demand increases, so that's typically why they increase the flows, you know, out of the reservoirs, mainly the clay alum. But too, you know, out of Ketchulus and Cachis, you know, that go into the Highline Canal. So it's quite an operation, and you know, quite a juggling act for them as well. But this past week the river fished really, really good. See, the birds are already out there anticipating some bugs. So yeah, lots happening. March browns in the afternoon around 2 o'clock have been killer. Mixed in with blue wings and a few caddis starting, and then definitely salmon flies. Starting to show up too. Not in great big huge numbers, not the adults, but definitely the nymphs. Lots of nymphs around, really lots through the upper farmlands, you know, and we always see a lot too, like right in the mouth of the lower canyon. So that's, and then there's a huge population in the upper river up above Clay Elm. So those are kind of three sections of the river where we really see a large concentration of salmon flies. But in recent years, they've kind of spread out and starting to move, you know, throughout the entire river. So big stonefly nymphs, you know, definitely, you know, a must. Of course, when we see river flows come up, you know, it washes a lot of worms around in the river. And they'll stay on worms, you know, for maybe a day or two. You know, you might catch a few fish on them, but when there's this many insects around and the insect hatches are starting, you know, especially mayflies, you know, they're going to be more concentrated on those March browns and those blue wings. So there is a river blockage in Reinhardt to Ringer here that you need to be aware of. There's a couple things, you know. This time of year, we're getting, you know, some pretty strong wind. Yesterday we had winds, you know, that were over 40 miles an hour. So when that happens, you know, especially after a couple of big flood events, there's a couple things. After big flood events, it creates a lot of erosion. You can see the trees, you know, that are down in the river. You can see the erosion along the banks, so you get a nice strong wind and that topples trees over. There's also a lot of beavers that love to chew on cottonwood trees in this section of the river. So they'll be gnawing on a tree for several weeks, you know, and then we get a wind and topples it over. So if you're gonna fish in this section floating, you know, you just have to have a heads up always, because you might go through one day and it might be clear, you know, and the next day it might have a river blockage. So just always have your eyes wide open. But here is the river blockage, and got a down tree here in Reinhardt to Ringer. Not a huge issue, but got to be careful. After these high water events that we've had, it's, especially in this area of the river, you can see all the timber everywhere. Plus spring, lots of wind here in Ellensburg, so lots of beavers in this section working on the cottonwoods, and we get a nice 30-40 mile an hour wind that topples trees. So one day you can come through and everything can be fine, and the next day you have a blockage. So you just always got to have a heads up. The old Viking logs set up here for low water. When you can't go over the log. Right now there's enough water. You can go over. High water, you should be able to go over it easily if you're a good rower. You know, it's always good to, better safe than sorry. You know, there's no shame in getting out and walking your boat. There's a lot of shame in putting your boat in the river because you're a lazy. You didn't think that you needed to get out and push it. So that happened right here last year a lot in low water. So there's no shame in it. If you need to get out and just push it through, get right back in. I lose your boat and all your gear and everything else and everybody else's gear. Doesn't make much sense. But the river's projection is, you know, to stay high for a day or two and then start dropping. So it's gonna dry out. Of course, there's not a lot, even from last week's snow, there's not a lot of snow left after that big rainfall. So the river's gonna drop. But again, we're getting into that period of time too. We're approaching the month of May. Of course, that's a big caddis month, but it's also a salmon smolt month too. They have put salmon smolt in the river. Chinook salmon, coho salmon, and we see these little pulses, they call them salmon pulses, of water that come out of the reservoir. The Clay Elm Reservoir is now 100% full, so I would suspect that we are going to see those, you know, throughout the month of May, and those can be disruptive, just so you have a heads up. It's usually just a quick shot of water, you know, into the system, and supposedly push salmon out of the river. It's really just a big waste of water, but yeah, if you fish the river, you know, the beginning of April, probably seen a wide variety of kind of different fishing. What we saw was, you know, a lot of the mature adult trout in the river, especially, you know, in the upper river through the farmlands area where there's lots of braid. But the mature adults were busy spawning, and maybe not a lot of big fish caught during then, but we're well past that now, and what we're seeing now is those big fish have finished up spawning, and they're putting the feed bag on. They're hungry and pretty aggressive. So that's a good thing to see, that we had a long spawn, and that's great for the river. We'll continue to produce great fishing for years to come here in the Yakima. That's about all there is to report. If you have any questions, as always, you can contact the Pro Shop. Happy to help. Until then, everybody, hope you have a good day.
Jesus, you told us to build on the rock. Oh, so here I am, right where it all stopped. This is where I built my foundation. I'm holding on to a salvation. This is where I'm starting from. And thank God for rock bottom. At rock bottom.